Hey, bitch. Life is a series of raw and messy broken parts, and it's up to us to embrace it for all the wild fuckery it is. So if you're feeling a little broken, well, you're in the right place. Welcome to Broken Bitches Guide.
When I wanna shine, I got Broken Bitches Guide. Hey. In a goddess so divine, I got Broken Bitches Guide. Yeah. Manifested by design, I got Broken Bitches Guide. Let me hear you from the back. Lifting up my vibes with Broken Bitches Guide.
Welcome to Broken Bitches Guide. I'm your host, Mandy Brooke, and today we are chatting with wellness and mindset coach Tiana Pollari about wellness for women, including menopause and weight loss, as well as learning how to embrace our abundance and the different ways we can let go of stress and recreate the narratives we tell ourselves. Tiana Pollari is a certified mindset coach with a background in holistic nutrition and movement. She works with women who really want to shift from scarcity to an abundant confidence by helping them uncover the blocks that may be holding them back from achieving their dream life. Tiana focuses on optimizing nutrition, movement, and mindset to help her clients release weight, balance their hormones, and start feeling their most confident selves. Welcome to the podcast, Tiana.
Thank you for having me. This is so exciting.
Oh, you're so welcome. I just absolutely love you. And the funny thing is we met on social media because I used one of your concepts actually, and you were gracious enough to let me use it. It was for the car karaoke.
Yeah.
So if you're familiar with my content at all on Instagram, I do a lot of car karaokes. I do a lot of like verses and stuff from popular songs back in the day. And Tiana was actually the first person that I saw do it with a specific wording. The wording was, when you forget everything, but you'll never forget this verse. I was like, oh my God, this is the most perfect wording to do my car karaoke with. And so I started using that verbiage, tagging you in all of those posts. I realized like you're a health and wellness coach, you're a mindset coach, and we just connected on that level. And now you're on my podcast. So how funny. I love the way that, Tiana, you say release weight, because you are in the business of like weight loss, and that word release, it poses the whole concept of weight loss to me as like an energetic thing rather than just purely physical.
Yeah. When I was getting into subconscious work and learning more about it, one of the things that they teach you is obviously language is so important, and everything that we say and we think imprints on the subconscious mind. And one of the words that they say, to use a different word, is lose, because the subconscious mind doesn't like to lose anything, because it likes comfort, it likes security, it likes safety, it likes what it knows. So when we say lose, 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 it's going to want to hold on a little bit more. So what we'd like to do is just release. We want to release our stories. We want to release our limiting beliefs. We want to release that old identity. And I thought, yes, this makes total sense. We just want to release and let go. And when I was creating my group program, I thought this whole idea of losing weight, it's more than just the food and it's more than just the movement. It has to do with how you view yourself. So your identity has to do with your values. It obviously then will trickle down into your habits and your behaviors. But, when we talk about how we see ourselves, it's the beliefs that we've held on to for so long, like, oh, it's so hard to lose weight. It just never works for me. The story is like, I lose it and then I gain it back. And when you start to believe that story, then your habits and behaviors will align to get into that cycle, and it just becomes your self-fulfilling prophecy. So that's why, you'll see so many women in the gym for hours. The scale will only move 2 pounds and then they gain back 5. So they're always up and down, up and down. So when I was, creating this program, and obviously it was based on everything that I'd gone through, I had an eating disorder when I was in my teens and into my 20s and early 30s. I thought, okay, well, what did I do to have that big shift and the biggest impact? And it was really getting real about my stories and all of the just junk we hold on to. And it really didn't have anything to do with the food, because if you think about it, I was restricting. So, I was like at that ideal body weight that I wanted, the magic number we always have in our head. But then I get there and it's like, oh, now what? Like nothing's really changed. So it wasn't until I did all of that mindset work and that deep personal internal work that everything started to shift.
Wow. So the narratives we tell ourselves are
Hmm.
so important. And when you're saying that, that we hold on to a lot of victim narratives as well. Like you said, the narratives we tell ourselves will align with our actions, will align with everything about us. And you have to tackle that first. I love that.
And I like one of my goals is, I mean, I have a lot, but one of them is to like really get women out of this victim mindset. That's a big roadblock and it's a blind spot. And, you know, blind spots are blind for a reason. And that's why I say it's great to work with a coach because they'll spot those out for you. But
Mhm.
some women don't even realize how deep they are in their victim mindset.
What are some common victim narratives that you hear in your coaching? Like, what are some common themes that women really believe about themselves?
Life is hard, right? Life is a struggle. Like I hear that it's so hard over and over and over again. And I just don't have the time. Time is a like a concept, right? Time is an illusion. Like you create time. We don't
Hmm.
have anything, we create it. And then some of the more sneaky ones are just, you know, the stories of, well, I've tried everything and nothing works for me. Like, and so then they kind of become resolved to their circumstances. Well, and I call that Eeyore energy because it's very like that energy is very dense and it's very heavy where you're like, huh, nothing ever works for me.
I love the Pooh Bear reference.
Yeah, I was trying to think of something one day when I was like, what's that energy like? I'm like, it's giving Eeyore. That's what it is.
Yes.
It's giving, yeah. Because it's just like, woe is me, right? And I get it when you're in your circumstance, it's very hard at times to see beyond that. That's why visualization is a key part of my coaching. And, you know, that's where we start with identity, visualization, and core values.
Mm. Visualization. We're going to definitely get back to visualization. But it's also very interesting too, the narratives that we tell ourselves, because sometimes when something happens in our lives that confirms that narrative, it's almost like a validation.
A
And
hundred
people
percent.
are addicted to that too, even if it's negative or perceived negative. And I find that in myself too. And I'm like, why am I taking pleasure in this setback? And it's because it's validating the story that I'm telling in my head.
So there's two things that I'll say about that. And one is the brain has the reticular activating system. So whatever you are thinking about and searching for, it will then go out and search to confirm that. So for example, if you're thinking, I want to buy a car. What kind of car do I want to buy? I'm thinking of a Toyota. I think I like red, but I never see red Toyotas on the road. I guarantee you the next day, every other car you see will be a red Toyota. Why? Because now your brain is searching for that to confirm it. It works both ways and it works with everything. So if you are constantly trying to confirm, like, yes, this is hard. Yes, this is hard. Your brain is going to say, okay, like, let's look for hard. And it's just going to give you everything to confirm that.
I definitely want to talk about abundance because that's such a huge, huge thing. I was in meditation a few days ago and actually had like a pretty big revelation on the concept of abundance. In my spiritual practice, like I light a candle for each one of my intentions, and one of them being like positive abundance flowing freely and effortlessly to me, whether that be wealth or prosperity or opportunities, etc. And for some reason, when I was saying it, like the scripting wasn't right. Like I wasn't saying the right words. So instead of trying to fight through that, I was like, you know what? Allow the right messaging of that intention to come through in my meditation today. And what came through was like very unexpected, but it was quite a big download of information, but I'll like cliff note it. I found like the abundance that I was seeking is the ability to enjoy my life and find the love in my life despite all of the trials and the tribulations. Because like really what kicks off the flow of abundance to me is finding that enjoyment where your life is right now. And instead of putting my intention on wealth or on career, on like the perfect body or what have you, I decided to put my intention on finding an abundance of beauty in my life where it already is. The act of being grateful for the abundance that I already have so it welcomes even more of it. Because we have this concept of like life being rainbows and butterflies like all the fucking time, like we're supposed to be happy all the fucking time, and it's not realistic. But what is realistic is the perspective that we can have on our ups and downs. Let's chat about abundance. Like, what is your take on it?
One of my biggest lessons over the last year has been abundance can really be anything. And I think so often we tie, and as an entrepreneur, like you're tying abundance to money and it's financial related. But the biggest lesson I've learned is like abundance is it's anything, it's everything. And for me, it's like abundance is the joy in the moment and joy being that default setting. And yeah, I have my moments. I'm not happy 24/7, but being able to walk to the beach in the evening to watch the sunset, that's abundance. Being able
Yes.
to dip my feet in the sea, that's abundance. Being able to drink clean water, that is also abundant, right? So it's not necessarily just wealth and just prosperity, but like you said, it's opportunity. It's enjoying your life right now. Like, what are you grateful for now? Things that happen or things that come up, it's all about your interpretation. And you can interpret it as, why is this happening to me? So going into victim mode, or it's like, okay, what am I meant to take from this? Which is
Mm.
more empowering.
I was having a discussion with a friend the other day, and she was contemplating whether or not she wanted to go on like this big solo trip or whatever. And I said, "Girl, you're depressed right now. Like, would you rather be depressed in Spain? If you have the option to change your outlook and to change your perspective, even if you're feeling those things, like it's okay to
Yeah.
embrace that, but don't deny the abundance that you have at your fingertips just because you're sad or just because you're grieving.
Right.
When I went to Italy on my solo trip, like I was honestly in not a very good place. I was very sad, but I'm like, I'd rather be sad in Italy. Like if I
Yeah.
have I was very lucky to have some savings at the time that I could spend on that. But like, where is your Italy? Where is your Spain? Even in your life
Mhm.
right now? Is it walking your dog at sunset, or is it going to the gym and really putting on a fucking great playlist and cardioing all of your worries away? I love doing that, by
Yeah.
the way.
Yeah, because it's like don't bypass your feelings by all
Mhm.
means. Like look at like you said to your friend, like you've got this abundance at your fingertips that you're able to go and experience this. And
Mhm.
maybe that will be the energy shift that she needs.
You work with a lot of women. You work with women with all kinds of different backgrounds, especially different ages and such. And one of the hot topics on my social media, especially, is perimenopause and menopause. And I was wondering, I know this is a very specific question, but what is like a simple thing that a woman in her 30s and 40s or 50s can start doing like right now to help them prepare their bodies for those types of changes? This is a
So
loaded question.
it is, and it's really the answer is not as complicated as you think. I'll tell you, stress management is probably number one.
Wow.
Yeah. So we're all going to be stressed. There's internal, external. Life is going to life. We accept this. It is how we respond to life circumstances, triggers, and whatnot that is going to make all of the difference. So, how do you manage your stress and how do you respond to your triggers? Because if you are living in a chronically stressed state, then that will equal inflammation. And that is where a lot of the issues come from is that your body is so inflamed. This is why some women will have horrible PMS. And, PMS is not normal. That just means your body is in a super inflamed state. So, how can we lower inflammation in order to mitigate some of these symptoms? So, stress management is going to be huge. Also, resistance training. So, getting off of the cardio bandwagon and
Mhm.
starting to lift weights because as you age, your hormones are going to shift and estrogen is going to decline. So let's help to mitigate some of that with some resistance training. And what I see is women saying, like, oh, I'm over 40, hormones change, huh? And they just kind of like throw their hands up. I'm like, yes. And this is what you can do to help mitigate some of those symptoms. So if you're not even perimenopausal, like this will apply to both like perimenopausal and like pre-perimenopausal, so in your 30s, because we're laying the foundation, right? And you want to be building lean muscle mass because it's great for your posture. It's great for bone density, which also, as women age, because the decline in estrogen, you're going to be losing a little bit of bone density. It's great for insulin sensitivity. So stress management and resistance training are two really, really big ones.
I need a trainer to make me lift weights. Because you know what? That's the story that I tell myself. Look at us right
I was
now.
just about to stop you because you're going into the story. You're like, because I suck. And I'm like, no, you don't.
I
Cancel
don't
that.
suck. I gotta cancel that. I don't need a trainer to lift weights. I can lift weights. So okay, so stress management, that cortisol.
Yeah,
What
because
kind of
when cortisol is high, you're in a state of fight or flight. Like your
Mhm.
body is just on, ready to go. And even if you think you're not stressed, there's still like low grade stress because even if you're like, hey, I don't have any kids, I'm single, I'm happily single, and I have a decent job and I like, but internally you're like, I really want to be doing this. I don't feel like unfulfilled expectations. Like I could be doing more. Like I need to be doing like I need to, should be like that sort of thing. Like that's still internally like low grade stress because like you'll just have this leaky faucet of cortisol, just like drip, drip, drip for an extended period of time.
I think I have a leaky faucet of cortisol for sure. How do I stop this, Tiana? Because I really, really try to maintain like as stress-free as possible. It's definitely easier said than done, especially with everything bombarding us constantly from the media to our social media to the phones in our hands. What are
Mhm.
some things that we can start doing to kind of shut off that leaky faucet?
I would say limiting screen time, mainly scrolling. It's easy to get into, the TikTok rabbit hole or the
Yeah.
IG rabbit hole, and you just all of a sudden you're mindlessly scrolling. You're like, oh my God, 30 minutes has gone by. Like I've been there. Trust me, I know. So putting app limits on your phone and limiting your screen time, that's going to be a huge one. And then if you are scrolling, like it's fun to look at funny things to make you laugh. Curate your feed so that everything that's coming up in your feed, it's things that you actually want to see and that, content you want to engage with and people that you want to engage with. Don't be afraid to unfollow people. So I would say definitely limiting screen time is going to be huge. Taking rest, take a day to just be and do nothing. And I learned this last week. I was on vacation and I was like, you know what? This is going to be a working vacation because I'm going to do. Day one, I had a client call. The Wi-Fi kicked out 3 times during that call. I
Wow.
know. And it took forever to like get back on the Wi-Fi. And I was like, I'm going to take this as a sign that I really just need to not do anything because the burnout is real. Even if it's not
Mhm.
physical, mentally and creatively, I'm tapped out. So let me just do nothing and be and let things come to me. Rest is a strategy.
Rest is a revolution.
Oh
It's
my God, that should go on a shirt.
and I that's not from me. That is from an amazing musical artist named Tony Jones. She does
Okay.
affirmation music. She was literally the first person that I ever listened to that did affirmation music.
I think I've
And
heard of her.
she's great. Anybody that's listening right now, literally go on Spotify, well, after you listen to this podcast episode, and look up Take Up Space Sis by Tony Jones. It's like rest is a revolution, not a luxury, she says.
Mhm.
And it's so true. And talking about that leaky faucet of cortisol, and I know that a lot of women feel this way when they rest, that guilt sets in
Mhm.
because we live in a microwave society, a masculine society where we're constantly having to do, and perform. And it's like, okay, I'm trying to rest and I'm really trying to give my body what it needs, but that guilt is starting in my
Yeah.
back of my head. That cortisol leak is happening. It's taken me a very long time to learn like how to rest, and I'm still learning.
I have to coach myself through rest to do this sometimes. And I'm lucky that I have friends who, one in particular, who's also in this space. And she'll always be like, girl, you need to chill. And I'm like, right. Okay. I'll coach myself through and I'll talk myself through. I'm like, you know what? Just surrender.
Mhm.
Everything always works out in your favor. It's fine. Everything's fine. We're all fine. And I take myself down. And the other question I say to myself, which could help your listeners, is if I continue to do this for the next, let's say, even 2 weeks, where am I going to end up? Like,
Mm.
I will be burnt out.
My mom always says too, she's like, are you a doctor? I'm like, no. And she's like, if you take 2 hours off, is somebody gonna die?
Die. Yeah.
And it's like, oh no. A lot of what our fears are so
They're
self-made.
created. It's a story. Yeah. It's a story in our head. And I always want to be in the energy of flow. So if we are in the energy of force, just think of like, what do you create? What's behind that when you're creating in that energy of force, right? I always want to be in flow. And last week was the best lesson where I was trying to force it. I was really trying to force it. And then I was like, okay, let's go into flow. And especially as an entrepreneur, you're always like this fear of like taking time off your business because it's this whole like you need to be productive. But what I'm learning and, what I coach women on is like, let's change our stories. And
Mm.
hard work doesn't always equal more money or more clients. That's another story. I'm like, I don't know whose story that is, but it's not mine. So releasing that story as well. And again, going back to surrender, trust, everything is always working out in my favor.
Another thing that I've realized too, planning your schedule around your menstrual cycle, around your moon
Hmm.
cycle, I've realized that women go through cycles of whether you're PMSing like the week before your period, you're going to feel emotional and those shadow aspects and those emotions are going to pop up and allowing them to come up and allowing them for you to like learn from them. And then during your period, like that hibernation, that's it's why you don't feel like you want to do things or go out in public or feel very motivated because you're supposed to be hibernating. You're supposed to be shedding. And
Yeah.
that's okay to rest. And then when you're ovulating, your full moon is out. Like
Yeah.
you want to feel like social and fun and motivated and you're growing, but to expect that full moon period to stay the entire time is unrealistic.
Hmm.
Just like in nature, when you're looking at the moon cycles, the full moon's not going to be out all the time, baby,
No.
and neither
Yeah,
are
no.
you.
And yeah, and everything is a cycle. And I was like you said, nature, and I was just going to equate it back to nature. Depending on where you live, you may have 4 seasons, and there's ebbs and flows within that whole, like within those 4 seasons, right? They're going through the cycle, and your body is the exact same. So you can't always be on, and you're not always, like you said, like that full moon and you're ovulating. Like when you're ovulating, it's like you feel like the biggest badass in the world, right? Like you can take on the world. Again, it's the same thing as like the cortisol, the go, go, go. Like imagine you were like that all month long. It's not sustainable. So for me, when I'm looking at my cycle, and this is also something I teach in my group program, is, if you want to sync your lifestyle, your nutrition to your cycle, you can very easily do it. And maybe you take some elements of it, but listen to your body. So you will know your body best. Like I can definitely give you all of these guidelines. You'll know your body best when to push down a little bit more on the gas, when to ease your foot up. So, when you're going into ovulation, like, yeah, like take on big projects. Like that's going to be your time to be creative and get shit done. As you're going into your period, you're not going to want to people. So don't schedule social things around that. So, and same thing with movement, right? Like you're going to want to really push a little bit harder when estrogen is at its peak. Then obviously, like once we get down into the luteal phase and you're getting ready to have your cycle, then you're going to want to just take down the intensity of your workouts. But again, you're listening to your body and listening to what it needs, but you can definitely sync everything into it. And that's when the magic really happens.
A lot of women too can do that even in menopause as well. We're always going through different cycles and stuff. You don't have to be like ovulating necessarily in order to schedule these things. Like your hormones are constantly changing, constantly, going
Mhm.
through cycles and such.
The narrative that's out there is, life is kind of over after 40, or life is over after 50, and like you've hit menopause and like womp womp. And, I'm like, who did these stories even come from?
Comes from
Because
men most of the
men,
time.
yeah, like this is the thing. It comes from men. So I'm like, let's lose that narrative and start to create your own story and your own narrative. Like, again, going back to the subconscious work and identity and core values, like, okay, let's start there. Let's create our own stories. Those are old stories we don't even need because they don't serve us.
Mhm.
So how can we create stories that actually serve us?
I just did a post today that was saying you're never too late. Martha Stewart didn't start
Yeah.
her whole business until she was like in her 40s and 50s. And all of these women who found extreme success and found themselves, and their stories did not end after 35. They
Yeah.
didn't end after 28. People make so much money off of our belief in ourselves and the
Our
stories
lack
that
of
we,
belief in ourselves too.
yeah, and the
Yeah.
stories that we tell ourselves and the stories
Mhm.
that we let them tell us. The older I get, the more I realize like the lies that have been sold to us. Okay, so to recap, some techniques that women can start doing is like embracing the flow, being less stressed,
Mhm.
embracing some practices to be less stressed, resistance training if you're into doing something physical, and just really forgiving and allowing ourselves to rest. So let's talk about what you were saying about visualization.
One of the things, like one of the exercises we do when we do identity work is think about your goal, whatever it is that you want, and envision the end result. And then think about who you need to be in order to become that
Hmm.
version of yourself. So, what are her habits? What are her values? What are her behaviors? Does she shop excessively on Amazon? Is she binging Netflix when she comes home at night? Is she hitting snooze 5 times in the morning? Like getting so granular and specific about that version of yourself and learning her and then becoming her. So always having that vision, that end goal, and embodying that energy now. Because I hate the fake it until you make it. It's embody it until you become it.
Being the person that you need to become in order to get all you desire, but just be it right now. You don't have to have that fancy house and that fancy job in order to
Yeah.
become the woman that you want to become.
Women wait for the like, I'll do it. They wait for the when. I'm like,
Hmm.
just do it now.
You don't have to lose 30 pounds to have a beach body. Just go to the beach.
Go to the beach. You don't need to lose 30 pounds to be happy. Be happy now. Right.
Hmm.
That's a very sneaky self-sabotage. Right.
Yeah.
Because then it holds you back. You resist taking action. It's a very clever self-sabotage strategy because then it keeps you in that cycle and then you resist taking any sort of action. And then you feel stuck. And I do stuck in air quotes because I don't think anyone is profoundly stuck. I just think you haven't been resourceful enough and you haven't been creative enough to get yourself out of wherever you feel stuck.
Mm. How can women start being resourceful?
Oh, she's putting it on the spot. Ask yourself better questions. So when they're feeling stuck, it's what am I meant to learn? Is there anyone that I can ask for help? It doesn't necessarily mean that you stay like everything stays within you. And maybe I'll just use me as an example. So last year, 2023, I think I was functionally depressed. I was just kind of like going through the motions with work, posting to posts, and when they say your thoughts really create your reality, I was like, oh, I totally lived that because I internally had a little bit of that Eeyore energy. And that was just my results were reflecting that. And I remember thinking, man, like my business is stuck. Like I don't know what to do. And then someone was like, maybe it's a marketing thing. And I'm like, oh, okay. So like, have I tried this, like this marketing tool? Have I reached out to this person? Could I join a marketing program? Like there were so many different avenues I could take off of that. Have you reached out to your network of friends? Because someone knows someone who knows someone. Right. So
Mm.
even something as simple as that. I remember a coach once said this to me, and I've used this example before, is a homeless person always gets their needs met. And I know that sounds very crude, but I'm like, they are incredibly resourceful. Yeah, they may be on the streets, but listen, whatever they've got going on, they find a way to get their needs met. That level of resourcefulness and that level of creativity and really thinking outside of the box.
Resourcefulness is really being uncomfortable.
Oh,
Like you
100%.
have to get unstuck, you have to get uncomfortable.
I mean, I am on this podcast because I reached out and I asked you. So, like, I want to be on more podcasts. I'm not going to sit here and say, oh, well, nobody's approaching me or I can't get on podcasts. Like, well, how resourceful am I being? Am I like reaching out to the ones I like? Am I reaching out to people that I feel their energy aligns? No, I'm not doing that. Okay, so you're not being resourceful.
I always use this analogy. You could be laying in a bed of needles, right? And they are poking at you. And if you stay very, very still, you
Mhm.
can convince yourself that you're comfortable and that your needs are being met because you're not in exact like excruciating pain.
Right. Yes.
But getting out of that needle stack is fucking hard and it hurts and it's not fun and it's very uncomfortable. But once you're out, then you're unstuck and you're out and you're free. Asking for that raise, it's that uncomfortable aspects of life that are going to make
Yeah.
you grow.
I've heard an analogy like that too. It was like a nail, a dog on a nail. And
Mm.
the person says, doesn't that hurt? And he's like, no, because he's not in enough pain yet to move. And that's exactly what you said about laying on the bed. It's like, if you're still enough, like that could actually feel comfortable.
Speaking of moving and getting uncomfortable,
Yeah.
you made a huge transition in your life to go to Barbados and take a chance and do all of these things. Let's talk about that.
Yeah. So, I mean, I took my first trip there back in 2010 on a girls' trip. I was like, this is fun. And then I went back in 2017. I made a few friends and I made two key friends. They basically just took me in, almost adopted me as like their own. Like, I just kept going back year after year after year. And there's just something about that island that's just so special. And I really love it there. And most importantly, I felt like I could just be myself, unfiltered and fully free. Then COVID happened, and then I wasn't able to go back for almost 2.5 years. And I remember a distinct moment in 2019. I was with a friend, we were in the ocean, and I remember saying, oh, I would love to live here. And then 2022, when I had visited, I was like, did not want to go back to Toronto. And I thought I could really see myself just living here. And I was like, well, like, why don't we just try?
That's amazing.
And then I remember I booked my ticket and I booked a one-way ticket. And I was like, okay, well, I booked a ticket. I didn't even have a place yet. And I was like, it's happening. Like the wheel, like the train's now slowly leaving the station. And then I gave notice on my apartment. I'm like, okay, like the train's like pulling out. And the apartment I had, it was like perfect. If you live in Toronto, you'll know like I had a parking spot and ensuite laundry, which are two massive luxuries. And it was decently priced. Like they didn't raise my rent for 3 years.
Wow.
And I remember even thinking, if I come back and like want to rent again, this is good. I'll never get this again. And I'm like, okay, it's fine. Everything will work out. And I always have to remind myself, I just have the intention. I don't need to figure out the how. The how always works itself out. So I've booked this ticket. Everything's like selling. I'm looking for places to stay. They're either like way out of budget, they don't have availability. And I was like, oh my God, like that's in that moment, I was like, what have I done? Like, I don't even have a place to stay. Like, what are we doing? Like going through all of these crazy thoughts. And then one of my friends who lives there was like, you're fine. And this is something that I've also noticed about the island is at least the people that I've been in contact with and I'm friends with is it's a very like, nothing's a problem. So imagine living somewhere where nothing's urgent, nothing's a problem, nothing's a big deal. I needed to not be like in that perfectionism type A, have to do everything, control. That energy was exactly what I needed. And when I got there and just experiencing the sun every day and being by water, and I thrive by water, I knew I had made the right decision.
I mean, talk about flow and lowering your cortisol. Let's all go to Barbados.
Everyone always says like you're glowing and I'm like, yeah, like island life is very different from North America
Mhm.
and you just got to keep an open mind. I'll say that and don't go with North American expectations. You just have to release all of that and just like take it for what it is and you'll have an amazing time.
I'm just so proud of you for taking that leap. And
Thank you.
really, just despite what everybody was saying to you, like, yeah, you probably shouldn't do this. And
Yeah,
you did it anyway, and you found
I did it
happiness.
anyway. And it's funny because when I was doing it, I was getting so much like people just questioning. And I realized like one, they operate in their own model of reality. And just because they wouldn't do it doesn't mean that it's like I shouldn't do it.
Mhm.
And I stopped telling people that I was leaving. I was like, you know what? I'm done. Like, I don't need to hear this. And so when I went and posted, people thought I was on vacation. And then like 2 weeks turned into three, turned into four. And then I can't even remember, but I think at like the 5 week mark, I was like, surprise. I live here now. And they were like, what? I didn't feel the need to tell anybody anymore.
People tend to get really uncomfortable when you tell them about growth.
Yeah.
It's it's why Queen Herbie says make your moves in silence. Move in
Totally.
silence because it is
Move in
so
silence.
it
Yeah.
is so so important. But I'm seeing more and more with talking to women like you and with my audience that we really are seeking calmness and peace, and everything flows after that, from our nutrition to
Mhm.
our bodies to the stress in our lives, like once we lead the way in that way.
When you think about, there's no lack in the universe. We live in an abundant universe. It's we create the lack and we create the resistance and we put up, those roadblocks. So when we allow ourselves to just surrender and just be and just flow, like you're clearing the way. You're literally like doing this for the universe to find like whatever it is you're looking for. It's clearing the way for you.
I think that's a perfect place to bring this conversation full circle. So where can everybody find your content and your master classes and everything?
So you can find me on all social media platforms. I'm most active on Instagram and TikTok at Tiana Pollari. You can also find all of the resources at tianapollari.com, where there's information about my one-on-one coaching as well as my group coaching.
Well, thank you
Yeah.
so much for being on this podcast and sharing all of this information with us and just being a bright light in this world to lead us in
Thank
the
you.
right direction.
Thank you so much. And thank you for having me on. This has been so much fun.
If you loved this podcast episode, please feel free to leave a review so it becomes more visible to broken bitches like us. And I have merch. Broken Bitches Guide officially has a coffee mug that says I'm a fucking delight. So if you want your neighbors to know how delightful you fucking are, definitely click the link in my show notes to get your mug. So until next time, be a fucking delight, bitch. Bye.